I will give you the centrifugal force thing. I don't think I've done enough research on that, and I will get back to you on that to see if I can understand that better. But
you were saying there's no kinks in the chain, basically. I think earlier about the globe Earth. Like there's never been a thing where they were like, look, it's a globe.
Kinks in the chain.
Yeah,
I have
because
no
you
idea
said
what you're referring
with
to.
Darwin's theory, so like the Nebraska caveman.
No, there's a clear narrative. I know who chose the Darwinian theory. I know why they chose it. I know when they chose it. I can give you. I might be wrong, and people can bicker about exactly what happened, but I've got data points to build a story. Okay. That's my point. With the round earth model or people choosing to all agree on this collective lie, there's no data points. There's no reason to think that actually happened.
Yes, there is.
Okay.
There's the moon landing. There's all this like different shit that people argue about.
That you have to assume was fake too. It's just like ad hoc after ad hoc after ad hoc. It's an ad hoc explanation to serve your purpose, on one on top of the other, on top of the other, on top of the other. You need... Who faked the moon landing exactly? Whose idea was it to fake the moon landing? And I think I know why. It was to basically scare the Russians and to, encourage the public. But whose idea was it? And it's the same thing with the round earth model. Like, whose idea was it to use the round earth model to demoralize the public? When did they decide it?
I don't think it's to demoralize the public. It's to put them in a hypersensory state so they're easier to manipulate.
Okay, that's fine, but somebody had to make the decision, or a group of somebody's had to make the decision. Who was it, or who were they? When did they do it? What made them...
Mammon.
Who?
Baal.
Okay, yes, on the macro spiritual level, the devil is behind anything, but who was the mouthpiece of the devil in this case?
In this case, probably Werner von Braun.
Okay, see, that's the kind of answer I'm looking for. Why do you think it's Werner von Braun?
Because he was the head of NASA at the time?
And that's the only reason you got. He was the head of NASA, so he had to be the head of the round earth thing.
He was put in charge of it. He was literally put in charge of it.
Put in charge of the round earth conspiracy?
No, the Apollo missions.
Okay, well, I'm talking about the round earth model. The moon landing thing, I mean, the earth could be round and the moon landing still be faked. Like, those are not connected pieces of data.
No, but there are points in which the establishment tried to convince the public of something.
Well, evolution's a point that the establishments tried to convince the public of stuff.
Right. Yeah.
Like there's lots of examples of that happening, but I'm not refuting that the governments do that. What I'm saying is, in the same way that I can look at historical pieces of evidence and kind of get an approximate idea of what happened, you need to be able to do something similar with the round earth model. If it was Werner von Braun that said we need to tell people that the earth is round so that we can demoralize the public, make them feel afraid, isolated, and alone, you need some kind of historical piece of data to prove that. You need something that gives me some kind of idea what happened and why it happened and when it happened. Like, I need a story. It might not be right in all the particulars, but I need some kind of story.
Oh. I'm a bad storyteller, bro.
Well, that's because there is no story. They've just been throwing this out in the ether because it's like counterculture.
Huh? Throwing what out in the ether?
The flat Earth model. They've been suggesting the flat Earth model
if
because
there wasn't a flat Earth, there
counterculture.
wouldn't even be a thing called an ether.
It's a saying. It's an analogy. There are people that are just advocating for the flat Earth because it's counterculture, not because it's actually real.
There is a lot of that.
Yeah. And I would also argue that's probably why there's so many models of it. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah.
They can't get into agreement because a lot of these guys haven't actually done the research. It's just, it's not it's the fight the system mentality, which I am all for. I like the fight the system mentality. The system can burn, but you gotta have data points. You can't just do something for fighting this. You can't just fight the system for its own sake. Like when I got critical of evolution, it wasn't because I was assuming my professors were lying to me. When they started to explain to me radiometric dating methods, specifically when I was in high school, they were doing carbon-13. But they don't do that anymore because it got called out too quickly. So they changed it to potassium argon and other crap. But when I was in middle school, they were pushing the carbon-13 thing. Carbon-13, carbon-14, one of the two. And I was like, well, wait a minute, that doesn't make sense, because how do you know how much carbon-13, carbon-14 is in a fossil to begin with? How can you measure the half-life if you don't know how much of the element you're measuring is in there in the fossil to start with? How can you do that? Well, that question made me raise an eyebrow. And then you start doing the research. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's okay to be cynical of something if there's something specific bothering you and it's prompting you to ask questions. But if you're just challenging the professor because they're the professor and you want to fight the man because it's fighting the man, well, that's different. That's a whole different attitude that I don't really like. Like, you need to have a specific question. Like, there needs to be a reason why you're challenging the consensus. Like, why did I instantly decide that the COVID vaccines were crap and told Jess we're not getting that thing?
Because all vaccines are crap?
No, it was because it happened right as everything was going really, really well in the Democratic, like when the Democratic primary was going on the fall before, the Democrats were making complete butts of themselves and they just nuked themselves. And Trump was killing it in the election cycle. And he just kept killing it. And so I was sitting there thinking, months before COVID ever happened, they've got to do something. They've got to, like, basically toss the apple cart, you know, to win this election. Because if he gets in for 8 years, they're done. You know, they got to do something. And they've got crap candidates that are all like 80 years old. And then like 2 months later, COVID happened. Me and Greg had this conversation. We're like, this is going too well. They're going to do something crazy to throw the apple cart, because that's the only way they're going to win. Sure enough, oh my gosh, there's this pandemic. Oh no. It was exactly what we predicted. That's why I didn't do the vaccines. That's why I was cynical of COVID from the start, because they were clearly getting their teeth kicked in months before they, COVID ever. Yeah, months before anything actually kicked off.
So you think just the Democrats did the COVID thing?
No, I think the Pentagon did it.
Oh, why?
Because Trump's the only president that has had no new wars in the last 40 years. Like, he's tapping into the military-industrial complex's money. They can't make money if they can't kill people.
Yeah.
And so he was dipping into their pocketbook, and that required them to do something. And Obama and Fauci and those guys had been working on those viruses since about 2014, 2015. And they'd got caught, and they moved all their research to China. So they grabbed this crap that they'd been working on anyway and just chucked it onto the world, and then screamed there was a pandemic, and basically moved some stupid end of the world scenario they had planned years ago. They just moved it forward 4 or 5 years. You know, that's getting into Alex Jones' stuff, and that's a whole other conversation. But the point is, me and Greg knew they were going to do something months before COVID ever happened, and that observation made me cynical. I wasn't cynical of COVID just because it was the government saying there's COVID. There were other factors influencing my decisions. And so my problem with the flat earth model is that it just seems to be challenging the consensus just because it's the consensus. I'm not seeing anything specific about the round earth model that makes them go, well, that doesn't make sense. Because
there's nothing in the round earth model that doesn't make you go, huh. Nothing?
Let me think, because I want to be honest. So you have to give me a minute. The only thing that would make me question the round earth, the only thing that I know of that doesn't make sense to me, is the fact that the moon is so large on the horizon and gets smaller when it goes up. That could be explained by some other phenomena, but I've always found that a little weird. But beyond that, I can't. Like, the centrifugal force thing makes sense to me. I'll get into some reasons why I think the Earth is flat here in a minute. But, yeah, I think it explains all the data points.
Huh. Okay.
So with that said, that seems like a pretty good transition for why I think the Earth is round.
Okay.
So, Eratosthenes calculated the circumference of the Earth, and the flat Earth community claims that the same math can be done if you change the sun's size and distance. But I think this fails to explain the seasons. So, for example, the Earth isn't moving. It's stationary. And of all the things they've argued about, everybody I've seen on the flat Earth model does seem to agree that the Earth has to be stationary. That does seem to be like a consistent claim. So the Earth can't move. Now, that means in order to get winter, the sun has to move, right? So the sun has to move away from some location on the Earth in order for there to be a winter, because the Earth can't move. So the Earth is stuck. So, if that is true, then the sun should be smaller in the winter by some degree. But that's not what we see. The sun is actually 3.4% larger during the winter. And according to the astronomers, the sun is the reason this is the case is because the Earth is actually 3 million miles closer to the sun during the winter. The reason that it's colder is because of the tilt. So even though the sun is bigger in the sky during the winter, the temperatures are colder, and I do not see how that is possible in a flat Earth model. So as far as I know, the round Earth model with a tilt is the only feasible explanation for that phenomena.
Why does the tilt make it colder?
Because you're no longer getting direct sunlight. You're getting the sunlight at an angle.
And that makes the rays less hot?
Yeah, you're not getting hit directly.
That's stupid as fuck.
Why is that stupid? It's just like when you're sitting there in the...
Because you're 300 million miles closer to the sun. Why would the tilt matter?
Well, imagine shining a light directly on a flat surface versus shining something at an angle. Like if you've got a light directly overhead and you've got a flat surface, it's going to be hot. But if you do this, then this portion is going to be colder than this portion. The light isn't going to hit the entire thing directly.
Yeah, but it's 300 million miles closer. Is that what you said?
Yes. Not 300, 3 million. 3
million miles closer. Dude, the tilt isn't going to make a shit worth of difference if it's 3 million miles closer.
It is if the thing's like 45... Oh, how long is it?
You could say that, but
it's like
dumb.
Hundreds of millions of miles away.
It's dumb.
I don't think so. I think that's the only thing that could possibly make sense. Then explain to me in the flat Earth model why in the dad blame world the sun is bigger in the sky during the winter and smaller in the summer.
I don't know that.
That is the exact opposite of what the flat Earth would predict.
Okay, so the sun is bigger in the winter?
Yes. And smaller in the summer. By a flat Earth model, there's no freaking way that could happen.
I think of the sun as an aperture. So I guess, I don't know. It's like how much, like a camera lens. I guess in theory it could change size.
Well, it wouldn't. I mean, even if you're right, it wouldn't change the problem. Because the Earth can't move. So if the Earth can't move, that means the sun has to change. Which means in order to get things colder, the sun has to be further away. But if the sun is closer and things are colder anyway, how can you get that on a flat Earth model?
I don't know. What do I look like, God?
Exactly. There's no explanation. There's none. There's none.
I mean, I'm sure there is. But
well, I have yet to find it. So
I guarantee you a flat one would make a whole lot more sense than a round one.
You'll have to dig around and see. All right, so reason number 2. It's not just that there are seasons. Now, we had a big long conversation about heat disbursement earlier, and that's one aspect of the problem. But here's what gets me. Why do you have seasonal reversals?
Huh?
Seasonal reversals. When it's summer in the northern hemisphere, it's winter in the southern hemisphere, and vice versa. How does that make sense on the flat Earth model? Because from what I understand from every model I've seen, and there are multiple, the sun still has to make 24-hour orbits around the entire plane. So if it still has to make enough orbits around the 24-hour plane, how do you get winter over here, summer over here, and then vice versa? How do you create seasonal reversals on the different sides of the planet when the sun has to make 24-hour revolutions all the time? The tilt's the only thing that can explain the seasonal reversals.
If it went up in a vortex, would that make sense?
Like if it went upward?
Yeah.
I don't see how. Here's the problem, and I haven't mentioned this before with the vortex thing. If you've got it 3,000 miles away from the Earth, it's hypothetically possible to get the day-night cycles. But even if the sun is smaller and you move the sun further up, you're going to screw with the day-night cycles by a lot. So the higher up you go, like say 250,000, if you went 250,000 miles above the Earth, by the measurements that they use from Aristophanes' math, the entire flat Earth plane would be in daylight all the time. So there's a cap on how high it can go. I don't know if that would... So I don't know, I mean, I'm not sure if that's relevant to what you said, but... You're very limited in how far the sun can go with the flat Earth model, I guess is my point. So how would you get seasonal reversals? Like, there needs to be a way that that's demonstrated, because on the globe model, tilt, summer, winter, summer, winter. You know, it's tilting, and so that's why you get opposing seasons on different hemispheres.
I've never thought about it, I guess.
Yeah. So how do you get opposing seasons on a flat Earth?
I don't know. I'm going to have to think about it for a week.
Yeah. So that's my second reason. Now, this is interesting. Reason number 3, there's been a lot of footage on the internet of showing cameras just zooming and zooming and zooming and zooming. Uh-huh. And they're cool. But if you leave the camera on, what you see is the ship descending into the water. Now that shouldn't be possible.
Because it sunk?
Huh?
Because it sunk?
No, because it's disappearing from view. When the object finally does disappear, if you zoom that camera, it doesn't matter how far out you go. If that object is moving and you keep that camera footage on that moving object, as it moves away from you, it dips below the horizon. Doesn't matter how far it is. Now, in a flat Earth model, that shouldn't be possible. What should happen is either it shrinks indefinitely until it gets too small to see, or it fades because of water vapor and atmospheric debris or whatever. So it should either shrink or fade from view, like a person moving in the fog. But that's not what happens. It dips below the horizon, which suggests there's a circumference.
Or it suggests there's waves.
No, because if there were waves, then there would be there's... Oh, we lost Trevor. Uh-oh. Oh. That's not good. Now, how in the world am I going to fix this?
Because whenever you go to zoom in on a boat, all that water line in front of you, all that horizon line, it's all being condensed into a relatively small frame.
That's the best I can do. I'm sorry, say that again. I was trying to create a scenario where people could at least see our face. So I'm sorry, repeat that?
Oh, it's all messed up, huh?
Yeah, with Trevor gone, my windows are all screwed up, but I've got it where people can tolerate it until he comes back.
Yeah.
So.
So whenever you zoom in on that boat, you're condensing a whole bunch of horizon into that frame, into that picture, right?
When you're zooming in
Like
on the
all the
boat,
water that's leading up to the picture gets condensed into a small.
I would assume it's getting
Yeah.
condensed. Yeah, okay. I think I'm
Okay.
following you.
So all that water in front of you, that miles and miles of water, like you've got waves in that, you got whatever else, plus the humidity.
If that were the case, there'd be an ebb and flow to it, so you would see
There
you would see it and come in and out of view, and then that would just be the case until it faded entirely.
there
Instead, it
always is.
continues to sink until it's all the way gone, and then you don't see it anymore.
Yeah.
It doesn't fade. It
Huh?
doesn't fade.
No, I
The
didn't
object
say it
doesn't
would
fade,
fade.
and the object doesn't shrink. It descends.
It does undulate. Like those videos do that.
Well, yes, it's going to undulate, but that's not really what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about the wave shifting of it or the vibration of the image. I'm talking about the motion of the entire vessel. The motion of the entire vessel goes downward until it's gone entirely. If you've got waves, like if you've got an object and you've got waves, then you're going to see it for a second and then not see it, and then see it for a second and then not see it. And
Which you
that
always do in those
process is
videos.
going to continue until it fades from view entirely. And so what we see, though, is that it goes downward. And so this doesn't really matter because, you know, if it's flat, it's still going to fade from view. If it's descending, you're still going to see it descend. Like the waves aren't going to matter.
Huh. Well, I guess we've seen different videos. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe we've seen different videos, but who can say? But that's another issue. Now, let's see. What's point number 4? Yeah, I think this is me reiterating the Southern Hemisphere stars, but I'm basically rephrasing this in the affirmative. I don't think there's another explanation for the stars spinning in opposite directions except a sphere. So if they're turning clockwise in the northern hemisphere and they're turning counterclockwise in the southern hemisphere, that has to be because one person's standing right side up, the other person's standing upside down. The motion of the stars, I don't see how Whitsitt's perspective idea really fixes the problem.
I don't think they do turn counterclockwise in the southern hemisphere.
Well, that's what people say, and the flat earthers
is that
deny
another one of
it.
those in Australia?
Whitsitt
The
didn't
toilet
deny
goes
it.
backwards.
Huh?
Does the toilet go backwards in Australia?
I didn't use that argument because I thought the flat earthers had a rebuttal for that.
Well, I mean, is that one of those same kind of things?
Yeah, it's the same kind of deal.
Okay.
But I from what I understand, the flat earthers are able to explain the water phenomena. So I didn't.
Yeah,
use
it's
the
not
point.
real. It doesn't actually happen.
See, now you're just denying like people's experience, though. Like, why should
Yeah,
I
but
trust? Why should I trust you over them, or vice versa?
I'll look it up right now. 2 toilets. Flush backwards. Australia.
All right, while you're working on that, I'm gonna
Toilets do not flush backwards in Australia.
Okay, well,
It's just bullshit. So the hemisphere thing might be bullshit too. I don't know.
Whitsitt didn't deny it when he was called out on it. He just tried to explain it with the perspective thing.
Well, I don't know.
Didn't
I'm not
make any
Whitsitt.
sense to me. So there's that. So I don't need to stay on that long because we've already debated that for 45 minutes. Yeah. So, all right, I'm gonna switch scenes here and then pull up a picture because I figured I would do a crappy job describing this.
Okay.
So here are a bunch of tall objects.
Yeah.
Windmills. And if you'll notice, bottom's cut off by the horizon. This suggests a curvature. Now, I was watching a math guy on this point, and it turns out, even though I don't know the freaking numbers, I was actually right on this. So the reason that you can see stuff further out on the water, like when you're standing at a beach, is because the height of the object actually does dramatically change the math. So, if you're standing here and the thing's taller than you, then you're going to be able to see it further and further away. So, I think that was Trevor, actually.
Yeah, it was.
So, yeah, the height of the object...
See, to me...
Yeah, does alter the math, and you should be able to see it further out. So, he's trying to get back on. He says his computer froze.
Yeah. So, when you zoom in on that windmill, to me, there is miles and miles of water right there at the base of that windmill, all being condensed into a little spot.
Okay.
So, which says the base of the windmill is also being condensed. I mean, like the more you zoom in, the more you're going to see. I mean, it's that simple. It's just a condensed photo.
So you're saying that is an optical illusion of the camera?
Yeah.
So what if somebody actually went out and said that? I mean, because this is just an example, but I mean, people go out and claim that they're seeing the phenomena of tall stuff looking like it's growing out of the water and the bottom being cut off.
Because the photo's being...
No,
your vision does the same thing as the camera. They made the camera based off the eye, bro.
So you think it's an optical illusion?
Yeah.
So you have to assume that light is literally bending. Say that again?
It's what? I said it's just light exposure. What's bending?
So light has to be literally bending to create this illusion, rather than just assuming the flat Earth.
No.
Or the round Earth.
Bending.
Like, well, you're talking about this being an optical illusion. Well, that means that the light has to be bending around to create it, doesn't it?
Not bending, condensing.
The light has to be condensing.
It's because you're putting miles and miles of image. Like, if you take a picture of just a straight black line, and it goes for miles and miles, you're not going to have any idea how long that line is.
Well, yeah, we're not making a claim about exactly how long this line is, but the bottom
right,
of the
but what I'm
windmill
saying
is cut off.
All that image is being condensed into that. Like, you're not seeing the whole picture. It's like it's like an accordion.
You might be right about like the optical effect, but I'm not seeing how that changes the problem, because the bottom line is the base of these windmills is not seen. They're obscured.
Because it's condensed. You just can't render it with your eye.
How does that work? So you can't see the base at all simply because it's condensed.
The more you zoom in, the more of the base that you're going to see, just like with a boat.
But there is no base there.
Well, it's because it's already zoomed all the way in. It's a shitty picture. I'm telling you, dude. I've taken a telescope to the ocean, and when you watch a boat disappear on the horizon, and then you take that telescope and you bring it back into view, and it's like, oh, it's right there. It hasn't sunk at all.
Yeah, if you zoom it in more, but my point was, if you hold it, it's going to continue to look like it's descending.
Because it's the same effect repeating itself.
Exactly. That effect is the curvature of the Earth.
No, that effect is condensation of the image that you're looking at.
If it was condensation of the image, it would fade from view. It doesn't make any sense for things to be like condensing and warping to create certain illusions. Like, if stuff gets further and further away, then you've got more crap in the way. Oh, and we're back.
There he is.
Hang on a minute. I gotta fix our windows again. All right. Hang on a minute. Trevor, welcome back. We hope you enjoyed this episode of Faith, Fiction, and Folklore. If you did, we would love it if you would subscribe to us on YouTube or follow us on Rumble. We can also be found on X, Instagram, and Facebook. And we are available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, and iHeartRadio. Thank you again very much for listening, and we'll see you next time.